I am live. I knew he was going to do that. Now he's chewing on his bone. Silly dog. Figured I'd pop on a little early. A couple minutes early. Hey, Lily. Hope you can hear me. Thank you. So it is Saturday evening. I decided to go live at 6 tonight because another channel went live at 5. And figured I'd just go ahead and go at 6. I had nothing else to do anyway. So, anyway, welcome to AA meeting. My name is Sandra and I'm an alcoholic. Please don't be judging each other in the comments. Don't harass other people that are in the comments or in the chat. Be kind to each other. Please greet each other and just have fun. I started doing these meetings 2.5 years ago. At first, I didn't think it was going to go well, but it's going pretty good so far. But anyways, let's go ahead and get the meeting started. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. So I always put in the description what book we're reading, what page we're on, and the story we're reading, in case if you want to follow along. If you don't have a book, don't worry, I'm going to read it anyways, and then share how it has, how that reading worked for me. Every time I read the books, it is different. I get something else out of it. So, yeah. Anyways, let's go ahead and anyway. 1. We admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable. 2. Came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. 3. Made a decision to turn our will and our lives over the care of God as we understood Him. 4. Made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. 5. Admitted to ourselves, to another human being, the exact nature of our wrong. 6. We're entirely ready to have God remove all these defective characters. 7. Humbly asked Him to remove our shortcomings. 8. Made a list of all persons we had harmed and become willing to make amends to them all. 9. Made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. 10. Continued to take personal inventory and when wrong, promptly admit it. 11. Sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood Him, praying only for knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry that out. 12. Having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we try to carry this message to other alcoholics and to practice these principles in all our affairs. Did I read that one twice? Sometimes I think I did. So we are on page 388, the perpetual quest. This lawyer tried psychiatrics, biofeedback, relaxation, exercise, and a host of other techniques to control her drinking. She finally found a solution uniquely tailored in the 12 steps. When I was will you lay down? Now, lay down. When I was a newly minted lawyer starting out in the practice of criminal law, there were 5 of us in our law office. My favorite lawyer was the energetic, disheveled, wild-eyed Irish law professor who was brilliant or crazy, depending on your point of view, constantly cleaning out his pipe bowl with a black fingernail and tossing back vodka martinis whenever he got the chance. Then there was the new but world-weary litigation lawyer who told endless tales of his former life of white wine and bouillabaisse under the Mediterranean sun. Just a second. As he conducted his exporting business on the Riviera, why would he leave such an ideal wine-drenched job in sunny climes to slog away at law school? I kept wondering. There was also a giant good-hearted bear of a man who today is a judge, who spent more time listening and helping others than he did practicing. Out of the picture. Thank you. Practicing criminal law. Into this office landed a pair of know-it-all, fast acting, but not too experienced young lawyers, my husband and me. Within a dozen years, three of these five promising lawyers were dead from alcoholism, struck down at the peak of their career. The judge is still and always has been a sober judge. Thank you. And I somehow unwittingly and even while drinking turned into a corporate counsel and later, thankfully, became a member of Alcoholics Anonymous. The professor's kidneys gave out from one too many martinis. The exporting lawyer kept drinking until he died. Despite a liver transplant, my husband died in a fire on what was to be, he had said, his last drunk before going to AA again. When I was 10 years sober, I have been to too many premature funerals due to our good friend alcohol. My husband and I met and married in law school in a romantic haze of alcohol, twinkling lights, and much promise. We stood out as the only young married couple in our class. We worked and played hard, camped and hiked and skied, threw fabulous parties for our sophisticated friends, and prided ourselves on staying away from drugs. In fact, it was fear that kept me away from drugs, fear that I might not get called to the bar. That's the other bar, the legal one. If I were convicted of possession of illegal street drugs, more importantly, best friend was wonderful, powerful, importantly, alcohol, and I loved it. Until I was 4 years old, I lived upstairs from a tavern where I saw a few drunks bounce around. My mother worked for relatives who also lived over the tavern, and whoever had time looked after me. Despite my pleas, my mother married a violent man, and we moved away to a life that made my tavern life look really holy. I kept running away back to the tavern until it was demolished. I still fondly look at pictures of that place. By the age of 14, I had my first drunk, which ended in a minor police visit to my home. By the age of 18, I was a daily drinker, and by age 21, I had my first year-long binge in France, which I mystically referred to as my study year abroad. I came home very sick and drunk. A few months later, I went to bed with a bottle of scotch one night and decided I would go to law school. If you are having trouble, try something that is even more difficult to show them. That was my philosophy. It was enough to drive me to drink, and it did. Hi, Ava. At law school, we used to drink a lot of beer in student pubs, debating whether rocks had souls and what was the nature of the judicial process, as though I had never been considered before. As new lawyers, my husband and I eagerly beavered in the office early in the morning before running off to court to fearlessly defend the downtrodden. Lunch was the training ground for the perpetual quest for the best martini, usually two or three of them, good for taking away the knot that by this time had prematurely lodged itself in my stomach. I didn't know that it represented fear and that I was not a fearless defender after all. Afternoons would be full of creative legal arguments in court. If court finished early, maybe we'd make it back to the office, maybe not. Evenings we drank with the best of them, lawyers, writers, media types, everyone baying to tell the best stories, which of course got funnier and funnier the more we drank, and the later it got. When I drank, the fear evaporated and I became articulate and apparently very, very funny. Or so they said then. Years later, I drank so much that I was no longer funny, but at the time, the drinks and the stories and the camaraderie were as wonderful as I was witty. We would get home to sleep by 1 or 2 in the morning, and the next day we would be up early to start all over again. The fortitude and reliance of youth made us invincible. Unfortunately, by the time we thought it was time to have a real life and maybe start a family, the marriage disintegrated. I was then 28 years old, getting divorced, drinking all the time, and seeing a psychiatrist 3 times a week, trying to solve my problem, whatever it was. I thought I had found part of the answer when I stumbled into a private controlled drinking program, which helped me during the initial 30-day mandatory period of abstinence to hook a very large rug row by row. Well, into many late nights. One more row, I kept saying, gritting my teeth against the drink. My period of abstinence also helped me get a better job in the corporate world, away from all those hard-drinking criminal lawyers and a new 3-story, 4-bedroom house. Just what every single woman needs. It helped me to quit the psychiatrist. During this abstinence, I also got out of a sick relationship which reproduced the violence of my childhood. Incredibly, I did not connect the improved manageability of my life in this short period of abstinence to the absence of booze. It didn't matter in the long run because unfortunately I started to get drunk again. I recall being fixated on that first glass of wine I was allowed to drink the day my coach informed me that I was ready to start drinking in a controlled fashion. My tongue was almost hanging out. Many drunks later, I tried everything else I could find. More therapy, different psychiatrists. It was always to be the next one who would solve my problem. Biofeedback, relaxation, exercises, interviews, lots of self-help books, from Pew to Jung to every current fad that was published or taught. All to no avail, of course, because I'd always end up drunk. Came the day when I realized that I couldn't keep dragging myself off to work in the morning and spending half the energy of every day concealing the fact that I was a barely functioning drunk. I would go home to drink until I passed out. Come to in the middle of the night terrified, listening to the radio and getting worldwide telephonic, finally dozing off at dawn just in time to be awakened by the alarm and start the process all over again. I gave up on relationships of any significance, saw my friends less, and stopped committing myself to most social occasions because I could never count on being sober. More and more, I just worked and went home to drink, and the drinking was starting to outstrip the working. One day I was so hungover at lunchtime I called a friend and had a little cry. I've tried everything and nothing works, I said, reciting my litany of doctors and different therapies. I did not remember that 13 years earlier, when I was 21 years old, I had attended a few meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous. After waking up one morning not knowing where I was, I just started law school and was terrified most of the time. So I went on a binge to quell the fear, which only got worse. I have no idea what made me go to AA way back then, but there were no young people at the meetings, and people kept marveling at how young and fresh I looked. No one at AA said that when I came back 13 years later. My friend suggested that we contact a man she knew who was a member of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I agreed to call him. Perhaps he could call you, she said helpfully, which was the key because by that night I was just fine and didn't need any outside help, aside from a drink or two. But he kept phoning and bothering me about going to a meeting. When he told me he went to AA meetings 3 or 4 times a week, I thought, poor man, he has nothing better to do. What a boring life it must be for him running around to AA meetings with nothing to drink. Boring indeed. No bouncing off walls, no falling downstairs, no regular trips to hospital emergency room, no lost cars, and on and on. My first meeting back at AA was on an unreasonably hot June night, but there was not a cool drink in sight. In that church basement, the smoke could have choked a horse. Today it is much improved, and a fanatical woman with smiling bright eyes eagerly explained to me that they had this important book I should buy, thinking that they were doing the book promotion because they needed the money. I said firmly, I'll give you the money, but I don't want your book. which about sums up my attitude and explains why. For the next few months, I continued to get drunk, in spite of dragging my body to meetings every few days. I would stare at the large vodka bottle in my kitchen cupboard and say, "You won't get me." But it did. I always lost the battle and ended up drunk. My last hangover was on a Friday before a long summer weekend. I had struggled through the day feeling small and hopeless, hiding the trembling of my hands. When I had to sign documents and desperately working to wrap my tongue around words during meetings. Later that Friday night, after an agonizingly long workday, I was dragging myself up the deserted street, thinking that the whole world except for me had some place to go on the long weekend, and what's more, they all had someone to go with. The first difference between that night and all the night other was that I did not immediately go directly to a bar to get lubricated or home with my regular giant weekend supply of food. Instead, I went to my club to swim, where strangely enough I also did not drink. I was so hungover that I had to give up trying to swim and instead wrapped myself in a bathrobe and sat in a dark corner of the locker room lounge for 2 hours feeling desperately sorry for myself. I don't know what happened during those 2 hours, but close to 8 o'clock I leapt up, jumped into my clothes, and raced off to a meeting I'd had no intention of attending. It was a bit like getting a rap on the head with an invisible hammer and having my brain flip over because the meeting seemed to be radically different from the last time I had been there. The people looked animatedly alive, and weirdos who had been attending before were absent that night, and the books on display actually looked interesting. I thought the book Alcoholics Anonymous listened intently, and then for the first time I went for coffee with those people and listened some more. Later that night at home, there was a presence in the room with me, even though I lived alone. The next morning I knew I didn't have to drink. That night I went to a step meeting where they discussed steps. Step 2, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. And I actually talked about God, the one who had abandoned me when I was very little, very frightened, and very hurt. In the weeks and months that followed, I did everything that was suggested to me. I went to a meeting every day, read the books and literature, and got a sponsor who told me to have a quiet time every morning and try to pray and meditate or at least sit still for a few minutes before racing off for the day. Since I prided myself on adhering to the intellectual principle of not hanging or not having contempt for anything prior to investigation, I tried to keep an open mind no matter what anyone said, and how stupid I thought I was. That probably saved my life. I joined a downtown group that met nearly or near my office right after work at 5:15. I would not have made it to 8 p.m. Soon I got into service. I was given bank books, notes, and business meetings, and various other instructions, and told to do whatever was necessary to keep the meeting going. I did that job for quite some time. I also instituted regular business meetings and found an eager newcomer to whom I eventually turned over the bank book and papers. I had a lot of problems in those early days, but no matter what the problem, I was repeatedly told to seek more spiritual development, something that did not interest me. I was also told that my purpose here on earth was to be of maximum service to God and the people around me, and that didn't interest me too much either. However, I said nothing, listened, and kept going to meetings, mostly step discussions, where I heard people talk about how they practice their steps and about the big book or selfishness, selfishness, Ugh. And kept others. Sometimes I thought they were nuts. Those meetings often I thought they were boring, but I kept listening and tried to relate. Soon after, a friend of mine was killed by a drunk going the wrong way on the freeway. A truck driver talked about driving long haul drunk. I was horrified and repelled until I paused to recall that I used to drive when I couldn't walk straight. When my friend was killed, my AA friend said, "Don't drink, don't think, go to meetings." I went to a meeting where I sobbed and gnashed my teeth, but I didn't drink. I became as compulsive about AA as I had been about drinking, which was necessary because I had been told to spend as much time at meetings as I had spent drinking. I would do every AA get together possible and was saturated with AA. I listened to tapes of AA talk. I read and reread the literature and books, laughing into the night over Dr. Bob and the good old timers. I signed up for the Loners Internationalist meetings in print, LIM, and shared the meetings I attended in letters to people who could not get to meetings. This helped me to remember what I had heard, and my sharing helped someone else. I once wrote to a man who received my letter the same day. He had killed someone in a car accident, which would no doubt make one very, very thirsty. Many years later, although alcohol is not my part of life, and I no longer have the compulsion to drink, it can still occur to me that I still occur to me what a good drink tastes like and what it can do for me. From my stand at attention alcoholic taste buds right down to my stretched out tingling toes. As my sponsor used to point out, such thoughts are like red flags telling me that something is not right, that I am stretched beyond my sober limit. It's time to get back to basics, AA, and see what needs changing. That special relationship with alcohol will always be there, waiting to seduce me again. I can stay protected by continuing to be an active member of AA. The hardest thing I had to deal with in sobriety was my own anger and the violence I lived through in my childhood. I had forgiven those involved as best I could, but the mind seems never to forget. I had gratefully received years of outside help because I was told that my drinking was only the symptom of deeper troubles. Yet despite the help of many professionals, I know I would never have recovered from violence and alcoholism without AA 12 steps, which are uniquely tailored for people like me. Just as important, I believe that I recovered through the grace of a higher power, despite the fact that I was very angry and wanted nothing to do with God when I arrived at Alcoholics Anonymous. In fact, I did not need to find God. I only needed an open mind, and the Spirit found me. When I was 5 years sober, I met a man in AA who was also 5 years sober. He said that the rocks in my head fit the holes in his. Today we have a daughter who has never seen her parents drink and who sees them try to help others in Alcoholics Anonymous. We have a nice home and sober family life in a community with lots of AA friends and meetings. It's a long, long way from the first AA meeting, and it couldn't get much better. So why I do these meetings. And AA taught me that. AA taught me that because I found the meetings and I started going to meetings regularly that I could help other people in sobriety. Even though this is the way I am doing it, I'm still pressing the AA to everyone, everywhere. And believe me, if I need to go to a meeting, I'm going to go to a meeting. I've never not gone to a meeting when I've needed to. And you guys probably don't know that doing these meetings actually helps me as well as helping you. It gives me that outlet that I can remember my steps, the ways that I have gotten this far in my sobriety. I've been sober for 10 years and a few months, and I wouldn't be sitting here if it wasn't for AA and having that fellowship that, yes, we go and have coffee. Yes, we meet up after meetings and go and have our coffee or just go hang out and chat. I still go out and see my sponsor. I probably should more often, but money wise, I can't really go out there that often. But I do still have my sponsor. I know she's there anytime I need her. I have family members who understand me and the things that I need when I need it. When I am in my down, feeling down and wanting to self-pity myself. My sister talks to me a lot about my feelings when I need to talk to somebody, and she's always there regardless of anything. And that's the best thing is that I have my best friend in my sobriety, and she is sober too. We're only a few months apart, and it's pretty amazing being able to share our sobriety journey together. The same as we've shared life dealings together on everything. Um, we only had a few months that we didn't talk, and that was hard. It was hard because I was getting sober on my own, and my sister was still drinking, and I could see her still drinking, and it hurt. But then, when I found AA, I talked her into going, and she got sober, and is still sober with me. And she's coming up on 10 years in July. I'm proud of her. I have other people that I have sponsored that have gotten their own sponsors because these, some of these people are my family, and uh, maybe don't feel close enough to tell me everything. So I completely understand them getting a different sponsor if that's what they've chosen to do. And you don't have to have the same sponsor all the time. And I had two. Um, I had two sponsors for a long time, and they both helped me a lot. And my sponsor that is still here, I talk to her every weekend when she's here in the meeting, and I say hi to her. I recognize that she's there, and I try to keep everybody's names out of my, unless if I've already had pre-approved consent to say their name, then I will say their name, but otherwise I don't. And a lot of people don't chat, which is fine. That's why I am always telling people, please be kind in the chat, because if there's somebody in chat that might not feel, you know, completely safe to be there in the chat, you just don't badger them and don't harass them because they may not. It might be their first meeting, so to be mindful. I understand if you're here and you're not in the chat. Just hit the like button and the subscribe button so that way, anytime I go live or I upload videos, you can watch them. Because I do also do adventure videos when we go out on trips and stuff and go sightseeing. Um, but yeah, so that's me. I'm gonna go ahead and read the daily reflection and then get on to the rest of the evening. I gotta eat my dinner. So it's February 22nd, and this one is guidance. This means a belief in a creator who is all power, justice, and love. A God who intends for me a purpose, a meaning, and a destiny to grow. However, haltingly toward his own likeness and image, as Bill sees it, page 51. As I began to understand my own powerlessness and my dependence on God as I understood Him, I began to see that there was a life which, if I could have it, I would have chosen for myself from the beginning. It is through the continuing work of the steps and the life in the fellowship that I've learned to see that there is truly a better way into which I am being guided. As I come to know more about God, I am able to trust Him always and His plan for the development of His chapter in me. Quickly or not so quickly, I grow towards His own image and likeness. Eh, God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Keep coming back. It works if you work it. I love you guys. Be safe out there and have a great rest of your weekend and stay sober. And I'll see you again on Tuesday morning at 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time.